Hey everyone, I am so sorry for the late stream. I'm a little like hour and a half past when I supposed to have started. Didn't even get much done with chaotic lore drafts that I intended to really get down in the nitty gritty of, because uh just earlier this morning I got in the mail my brand new phone. It's S21 FE. It's not the newest thing. I don't really need it to be like the newest thing. Still will do its job. Initially went 22, but this is perfectly fine. And then I had to deal with the smart switch thing, which is like was a whole thing. Whereas like I'm thinking like, oh my god, I gotta go to the store, find this little thing to probably use the wire because the wireless isn't connecting correctly to the smart switch thing. But eventually got it figured out once I had to, because the phone took me directly to the smart switch thing rather than just setting up first, then allow me to do the smart switch thing so everything can link out correctly. It was a whole thing, and I had to spend time on the phone with other people trying to figure out what's what. And then once I eventually got in, I gotta recalibrate like all my passwords and to all the apps and everything like that. Facebook one was gonna be, thought it'd be a pain in the butt, but thank God it wasn't. But it was a whole process, and it took like at least a couple of hours. But I spent like some of that while eventually getting the stuff linking up with my old phone to my new phone, getting like the thumbnails and everything like that prepared for the 2 reviews I got for today. Thank God it's not going to be that long. Give me some time to get into more FF16 afterwards. But man, oh god, oh my god, it was a whole thing. And I was like literally anxiety hitting me like, oh my god, do I gotta go all the way to the store, but the T-Mobile store? But no, call up there, doesn't seem like they have, like, they wouldn't have what I needed anyway. It would have been a waste of complete time, and it would piss me off even more. Luckily I didn't have to go through all that, but I got it. I'm here now. But god, it was a whole thing. I got it. But I want to eventually get me, this is like I need to get a phone case. I want to get like there's a Naruto one I want to get, but I probably have to order it off of Amazon, because you'll think a kiosk at a mall will have like a plethora of like phone cases for like anime stuff, but I tried looking for that like last week. But anyway, I am here to talk about the Marvel anime X-Men, which I'll do after this. But first things first, my spoiler review of X-Men Magneto Testament. And before we continue, please like and subscribe, hit the notification bell if you're watching this on YouTube. Let me leave a comment, let me know what you think of the one of the most infamous supervillains in pop culture history, Magneto. Probably the most sympathetic one, as we're about to delve into here. This is more like a period piece and less so about the fantastical that is Eric Magnus, aka Eric Lencher. Follow me on links in the description below, like my Twitch, Patreon, Instagram, what have you. Anywho, before we get into it, let's go break down Magneto's power set. So Magneto is an alpha level mutant. But then later, evolve into the Omega level mutant because his power of magnetism encompass engross the entire globe. He has been stated on several occasions to have been one of the most powerful mutants. He has also been described several times as the most powerful mutant, Earth's most powerful supervillain, even the single most powerful being on the face of the Earth. He possesses tremendous amounts of power, which is, for all practical purposes, limitless. The upper limits of Magneto's power can be surpassed in any measurable fashion because magnetism covers the whole freaking world. Is almost, like it's like the air we breathe. It's everywhere. Magnetism manipulation. Magneto has comprehensive control over all forms of magnetism and utilizes that control to manipulate any metal and achieve a variety of effects. He recently proved able to effectively hold together the headless form of a celestial. Magneto can manipulate an entire planet electromagnetic field and once even pulled back the gigantic magnetic bullet where Kitty Pryde was trapped inside, which was at least a few light years away from Earth. Though these are tasks that require great effort on his part, Magneto's power is comparable with the Phoenix's. He has harnessed magnetism to stop armies, raise islands from ocean floors, move mountains, change the course of rivers, and threaten to devastate the world with floods and earthquakes. Magneto once blanketed the entire globe with a self-generated electromagnetic pulse that caused widespread devastation. Moreover, he can use his magnetic powers in more than one way simultaneously. He can completely assemble a complicated machine within seconds through his powers. It is unclear whether Magneto's power is psionic or purely physiological in nature. He can make force fields, has magnetic armor, magnetic rays. Magneto has the ability to shoot powerful rays and electromagnetic pulses, and has shown this ability to destroy both metallic and non-metallic objects. You probably see this kind of stuff in Marvel vs. Capcom. Magnetic flight, geomagnetic link. Magneto's X gene plays an important role in mitigating tactile perception to Earth's electrical magnetic field. This trait remained even when rendered temporarily powerless by Lilandra. As it is affected, so is he. He knows instinctively at all that happens to it. Gravity decrease, matter manipulation, metal morphing, organic iron manipulation, electromagnetic sights. By concentrating, Magneto can perceive the world around himself as patterns of magnetic and electrical energy. He can perceive the natural electromagnetic auras given off by... There's a fly in here. I don't know how he got in this house. Where was I? Electromagnetic auras given off by living beings. Electromagnetic spectrum manipulation, electricity absorption and generation, portal creation. Through as of yet unknown application of his powers, Eric can open wormholes between 2 points in space and time in order to traverse the most impassable of distances almost instantly. Light generation and manipulation, invisibility, dimensional awareness, astral projection. Magneto has occasionally been said to be able to manifest an astral projection of himself. He was able to interact with Professor X. Telepathic resistance. Magneto has trained himself to extensively for fighting telepaths and is resistant to telepathic attack even when unconscious. This training is similar to that given to the X-Men and New Mutants by Professor X, although the effects are further augmented with the aid of his helmet. Genius intellect, skilled combatant, multilingual, speaks English, Arabic, French, German, Hebrew, Polish, Russian, Ukrainian, and Yiddish. People tend to forget like Magneto is a Jewish man. Indomitable will, weaknesses, physical condition. Magneto's ability to wield his superhuman powers effectively is dependent upon his physical condition. When severely injured, his power is unable to withstand the strain of manipulating magnetic energy. When his powers are not Did I get it? I got the bastard. Don't know if I did. Sorry. Alright, should get this fly swatter though. That'd be handy right now. When his powers are not at their peak, he also appears to have greater difficulty utilizing his magnetism for greater feats. He is also susceptible to physical and mental fatigue that can ultimately affect his ability to adequately use his powers, especially if he overuses or extends them in a short amount of time. Headaches. As a side effect of his vast powers Magneto manipulates, he is prone to headaches. There's little notes here. Magneto has a propensity for mental illness and depression. Magneto has suffered repeated exposures of mental illness, mental breakdowns, and mania. His literal bipolar tendencies were once diagnosed by Maura McTaggart as possibly being a natural side effect of his powers, which she tried to correct him of when he was reduced to an infant in her care. Despite being a teenager during the Holocaust, due to being de-aged to a baby and re-aged to his prime, as well as later rejuvenated by the High Evolutionary, Magneto has the body of a man in his prime, which would explain why he, he grew up during the, he was a teenager during the Holocaust. He hasn't passed away. Which could, the writers can just play fast and loose with his age. Despite his religious Jewish upbringing, Magneto became an atheist due to his experiences in the camps. Magneto has claimed to be able to sense the greed and envy of a man's heart even when meeting this man for the first time. He finds it easy to manipulate others through these qualities. Magneto maintains an archive containing names and images of numerous mutants violently killed. While Magneto is Jewish, he maintained a Sentai Romani cover identity as Eric Langshire when searching for his wife Magna. This created confusion among some readers as to his heritage until it was authoritatively confirmed that he is Jewish. It should be noted that his confusion probably stems from a comic book published in the early 1990s, which attempted to retcon Magneto into being a Senti Romani Holocaust survivor, possibly because Marvel was preparing to make Magneto a deadly villain again in the crossover called Fatal Attractions, and they did not want to draw accusations of anti-Semitism by having one of their main villains being Jewish. This attempted retcon was corrected a few years later when it was revealed that the name Eric Langshire and the Sentai ethnicity were part of a cover identity as mentioned above. Okay. Ooh. Now we got that out of the way. Magneto Testament was written by Greg Peck, art by Carmine Di Giomenico. You might remember the art style from my reviews of like Luke Cage Noir and Spider-Man Noir. He did those, and he did a couple of DC art, like my first Flash comic book review, meeting with like Godspeed during the whole DC Rebirth. He did that, and he was a part of the some of the art for one of my favorite comic book events, DC Metal. So he was a major part of that, and he played a major part in the artist's rendition of one of the Dark Multiverse Batman, Red Death. That was him. So now I want to emphasize here, because I really, if I want to make like my first Magneto story, it had to be this. Given the fact that we get a good picture of why Magneto has like the point of view the way he does, given like the horrific things he's witnessed, growing up during the Holocaust, and the people that he lost, and the things that he saw. All that's probably like extremely triggering for him. So that kind of translates to how he sees his mutant brethren persecuted, and it's like, like I've seen how this goes too many times, and it's gonna play out exactly the same way. The only difference is, instead of just Jewish people, it's mutants. So people gotta understand that you gotta read a freaking history book, attend some classes, learn something from a Jewish person about the horrors of the Holocaust. So that stuff, did happen. I don't care, like, don't listen to those Holocaust deniers, okay? This stuff did happen. And kudos to the writers and people behind this who, I made a point to have in a few of these slides of information that they detail, because they you'll see like in a Ford that I'll show you, that they want to make sure that they keep some level of realism and try to match it up with Magneto's childhood, and like he would be there, and all the atrocities that happened, he would have been there. Same way with like Captain America, obviously, and then Wolverine, obviously, because he would have been alive during that point. And in some iterations, there are plenty of times where like Cap and Wolverine would have met up with or at least seen or bumped into Magneto when he was a child at that time, because given Wolverine's healing factor, he would have lived long enough to have been privy to this horrific events. And then Captain America would have already gotten the super soldier serum and battled the Red Skull and other Hydra and Nazi foes But depending on the writer, sometimes they have these two or at least three people meet up at some point. So Magneto lives his life with like his uh, parents, his uncle, and his young sister Ruth, and he attended school. It's like they live like a like a wholesome living conditions. This wouldn't last long because Magneto at this point would have been like 8 or so between 8 and 10 at this point. Uh, he was fairly young, definitely going to grade school at this point. Probably getting close to becoming like a you're probably getting close, probably at least 10, getting close to being like a teenager. Because he's already having like an interest in this Romani girl named Magna, who would eventually be his wife, who will eventually birth his children for him. Polaris, Wanda, Pietro. And while I was reading this, it got to my head like, oh, that's probably where he got the whole name Magnus from. He kind of like, also it's kind of a play on his alter ego's name, but it's also plays perfectly with the love of his life. He just kind of turned it into like a boy's name. Sorry, I just check something here. So while at school, like you already get like this is leading into the whole events where like this proceeds to the point of the Holocaust, where you see a lot of the German people just talking mad shit to anybody of Jewish descent or even anybody that's not of Aryan blood. So during one of the I guess is gym time, I guess you would call it, where Eric is tasked to, well, they doing all these different like different tasks during this class period. And of course, he sees Magna and her family like cleaning up the yard and everything like that, and some snot-nosed punk said like, "Oh, trash loves trash," didn't sit well with Eric, but he's tasked to throw a javelin, and of course everybody's like down on him, including one of the teachers who's German, saying like they doubt that like a Jewish boy would beat somebody of Aryan descent. And you can say this is his early phase when his magnetic powers are building a bit. Not quite there yet, but like I said, that's not really the main focus of the story. But kudos to the writer where they kind of like make sure they kind of leave seeds here and there throughout this 5-issue story of how him being able to do certain things, like he's able to spot like coins and other magnetic objects. People, his family attributed to be like, oh, he just got very good eyesight, but he could say his magnetic powers allow that to rise from the ground where like others just cannot see it, where he can just instinctively kind of lure it up to the surface for him to see, and he can just spot it like that. You gotta think of it that way. So he throws a javelin. You can say it was his magnetic powers kind of like helping it get to the point where he needs to go, or it could just been his own will, his own person, that got him ahead of everybody, which earned him a medal. Which kind of weird. I won't say kind of weird. I'm pretty sure there was plenty of objects at that time that has the swastika on it, which was like at that time. I imagine at that time, before the events of WWE2 really kicked off, because not many people will know this, but if you do your research, the swastika originally was like, I'm pretty sure it was like Indian. I believe it was from that culture, where it's supposed to have been something like a peace sign, or something meant for a good image. But because of Hitler and all the crap that he pulled, and he took that and turned it into something vile, so now you can't really kind of revert that back at this point. So you see these objects, this symbol on certain objects like this medal, where at that time you wouldn't think nothing of it, but now it means something horrible, at this point. So Eric won the javelin throwing. He's living like he's on the high, and he's he got because his family's like metal workers, right? Or jewelers, I should say. And he's able to like scrounge up some different types of metal and make this kind of necklace, and he races to Magna while her mother's kind of pulling her through the crowd, and he want to give her this thing he made for her, and which she wears it on her person at all times. Whenever he sees her, she has that on, because she was smitten with him as much. But as he's going through the crowd, he took notice that his uncle, who's, I guess you would say he was kind of like a player, but at this point in time, when he was kind of like fraternizing with a German woman, he got busted, and they dragged him through the crowd and beat on him in front of everybody. There's certain images I don't want to put up on screen, but done too vile. But this one I really want to like point out, because I don't read German, but they kind of do a nice thing where you kind of translate, where the sign says, "I have shamed a German woman." So now it's like all that happiness that he was feeling just literally minutes ago, all has just vanished. When he's seeing because things are starting to kick off, this Nazi flags waving in the air, and people doing like that stupid salute. So when when he gets back to school now, he has like a German teacher, and he has like a Jewish teacher, and the German teacher tells Eric to come up in front of everybody. I'm not sure he was like the only Jewish kid in like a school full of German kids, but he stood in front of everybody, and they accused him of cheating, essentially, because or not necessarily cheating, but the javelin he used was faulty, because there's no way a Jewish person can beat a German guy in like a javelin throwing. So they have him do it again, but this time the javelin they gave him is a lot heavier. Pretty much trying to, like, you know, sabotage and not make it fair. And so he, you know, looks to his like Jewish teacher. I forgot the man's name, but he's like, you know, this it's kind of BS, man. It's like, you know, but he just tells like, just do it, Eric, just whatever. But because he was proud of Eric at first, the fact that he, you know, despite these kids taunting and racist rhetoric, he managed to beat all of them fair and square, might add. But now they force him to like do it again. You can't raise a fuss about it, so just do it, Eric. And he does it and still beats it. And now, I gotta say, now I'm thinking about it, I argue that at first the javelin throwing was on his own merit. The second time around, given the fact that they, you know, give him a heavier one, I argue he might have used his early stages of his power to move it just enough to still make it beat everybody else. But this, nobody can prove it, and even to the reader, you might not know whether or not, that's just my guess, you might not know whether or not his powers manifested and forced that metal javelin to go to a further distance. But, you know, that's just my assumption. You can leave a comment whether or not you believe what I say is true, or, you know, there was no powers involved at all. But then he got expelled, thinking like, oh, you know, this is like a whole entire thing. It's a bunch of bunk. And then, despite him not doing anything wrong, he walks out, sees that his Jewish teacher is getting dragged out by Nazi soldiers and beat on, and then he'll be seen later in the story in one of the concentration camps. And then a bunch of other German students see him and then starts chasing him down, despite Eric's attempt to fight them off. There's too many of them, and they all jumped on him and takes the medal with the Nazi swastika on it and beat him with it. Very horrific. Here's the 4 that I want to read specifically. I really wanted to like make this like clear for everybody. I do not want to mince words. In the 3 years, editor Warren Simmons and I have been developing Magneto Testament. We've struggled with the complicated, rich, and contradictory information the comics give us about Magneto's life during the Nazi rise to power in WW2. Different comics give different accounts of Magneto's name, his age, his ethnicity, and religion, his hair color, and even his Auschwitz tattoo number, which, you know, has been redacted from early years of Marvel Comics. But as dictated, Magneto fans have documented the most compelling and essential material indicates that Magneto was a Jewish boy in Europe during the Nazi ascendancy, and provides several key details about the fate of his family and his experiences in Auschwitz. We've done our best to remain true to these elements while fleshing out the rest of our heroes' experiences based on research into the actual historical record. Longtime readers will notice a wealth of surprising new details. For example, for the first time, we've revealing Magneto's birth name, and sometimes because the comics record is contradictory or conflicts with historical fact, we've had to choose one detail over another. But at every step, we've done our best to remain true to the key moments that have contributed so much towards making Magneto the deeply compelling character we know today. But most importantly, in an age in which Holocaust deniers still spread their lies, we've done our best to ensure that the real-world history we explore in the series is entirely accurate and that we deal with the unfathomably harrowing material in a way that's honest, unflinching, human, and humane. In later issues, we'll provide citations and suggestions for future reading. For now, we offer 1,000 thanks to Mark Wiseman of the Simon Wiesenthal Center for his expert advice and historical fact checking. Greg Peck, New York City. Yeah, and I also want to like make sure that I chose panels with these citations and like records that, you know, about how many people died and, you know, certain things that happen in certain camps and things like that. Not everything, but, you know, that's what, and highly encourage you guys to read this. It's not like a one-to-one shot of Holocaust, you know, history. It's kind of like a truncated stuff, but do yourselves an immense favor and actually go to your local library or go on Google, like, you know, and like read up on the atrocities that happened during the Holocaust period. So Eric's father, you know, since the family has been worrying about what's going on, he figures he'll go see one of his war buddies who was a German man during WW1 that Eric's father saved the life of, and figure like, oh, he can give us help. Since he like kind of like, you know, he figures like, oh, like, you know, he would have no problem doing me this favor. And this is happening during the time of the Munich, wasn't the Munich Olympics, or just the Olympics during like 1936, I believe. It was during around the time when Jesse Owens won so many of those medals during that year of the Olympics. And you can see a bunch of like German people getting all pissy because a black man won all those medals over all these German dudes, which put a smile on my face, and it should for you. So while Eric was waiting on the steps of the building, because I mean, the father notices them taking down certain signs that's very, you know, racist and like, you know, prejudice against Jewish people. He's like, oh, see, Eric, you know, things aren't as bad as it seems. Like they're taking this stuff down and they're being a little more cordial and blah blah blah. And it's like, we all know from a historical point, this is like the calm before the real storm. But they trying to save face given the fact that the Olympics are being held in Germany at this time. So they can't have all this, you know, these weird, you know, racist banners, you know, spread all throughout the nation, given the fact that other, you know, people from different countries are coming to Germany. So while Eric is waiting for a very long time, the father walks out disappointed, but a bunch of German soldiers seize the father, and they're about to question, like his name was Scarf, something like that. And they're about to, you know, question like, hey, do you know this Jewish man? And it's like, you know, no. And then they proceed to beat on the father in front of Eric. They drag him inside the building, and it was for a while. And they come out, tosses him out on the steps, you know, clearly beating on him the whole entire time, probably questioning him at the same time. But then the old supposed war buddy walks out and says, like, you know, they could have killed him, but now we're even. Essentially, it's saying, like, you know, like, I kept you from, you saved my life in that war, so I kept you from dying in there where they could have just killed you outright, so now we're even. And it's like, wow, how quickly people just turn on you like that, clearly buying into the whole killer rhetoric and stuff, because the warp the warped mind of dictators like that can just make, you know, people who, because there's been accounts that, you know, after many German soldiers were being tried for war crimes after uh the Allies won WW2, and they seen, like, you know, videotapes of when they in court, and they see all the videotapes and atrocities done to not just human, you know, Jewish people, but like, you know, Romani people, formerly known to be like, you know, gypsies, but you know, we know as like a bad word. So Romani people, gay people, you know, just people that aren't just pure German, done horrific stuff to, you know, just monstrous things. And they literally had like vomited, they were sick, they couldn't, like, you know, stand the sight of what they did, and they clearly did it. So clearly you let this broken man, this inhuman monster, fill your head full of poison, and you follow that crap, and you done all these horrific things. And now it's like, you know, now that snake venom is out your ear, now you're like, oh my god, what the heck did I do? And it's like, not everyone, but a good amount of them was like literally sick to their stomach from what they seen. Because I remember from like my dailiest word watch along, one of the episodes is like the Viet Cong versus the Nazi Waffen SS, and like one of the Nazi experts point like Nazi experts, but like, you know, people who are historians of that particular time period, mentions that, you know, like, because this particular dictator got in these people's heads, usually at a very young age, filling their head all this crap, like how we're like, oh, you're better than everybody else and everything like that, you know. The kind of like, as he points out, if you believe your enemy is a dog, then it makes it very easy to pull the trigger. And that's what it is. It's like he felt that their heads full of all this garbage. So, you know, you see your fellow man as less than, then it's like you feel like, you know, your empathy goes out the window. But I do encourage people to, you know, watch movies like Schindler's List. I know I butcher that. I say it like 1,000 times over the years, and I can't get it out right now. But you know, definitely watch that movie. Like I think like in film class in high school, the first movie I watched that really delved into these kind of things was I was about to say A Beautiful Mind, but that's like a Russell Crowe movie. Life is Beautiful. Life is Beautiful. And man, that ends on like a kind of like a sour note, kind of like a bittersweet kind of note, given the fact that, I don't want to spoil it, but it's pretty much like a father, don't know if it was like a daughter or a son. I think it was a son. Pretty much trying to keep, like, because the son was so young, like, you know, like, oh, we're just playing pretend, and try to get certain other Jewish, you know, people in the camps to kind of like play along kind of situation, trying not to get this kid to, you know, if you lose that part of him, then he will, you know, like, he doesn't want this nightmare to, the reality to hit him at such a young age. Doesn't work well for a lot of kids that was there at that time. But I don't want to spoil how it ends. Do yourself a huge favor and watch Life is Beautiful, Schindler's List. Got it right that time. And to, like, you know, it's a little dramatized, but, you know, it was, I you know, like to think they're like probably the most accurate depictions of what happened during this period of the Holocaust. Around this time, things is getting progressively a lot worse and worse and worse, and to the point where the uncle's just like, you know, because after, you know, Eric got into a fight with a kid who, you know, on that racist crap about, like, you know, Jewish people, like, oh, like, you know one guy just tossed some punk kid tosses like a gold coin in the ground in like a mud right near Eric, and he says something racist, about it, because given the fact like, oh, Jewish people do everything for money, all that racist bull crap. And like some kids snickering like, oh my god, he's actually thinking about it. And then Eric, kudos to him. It's like, honestly, I never thought utter these words, but kudos to Magneto. He takes that kid, shove his ass into the dirt right next to the coin, takes it and wipes it clean off that kid's jacket, and just says like, oh, thank you. Like, and then like runs off. And of course he comes back after they see like a Jewish person getting beat up by these said kids because he laughed at what Eric did to them. So Eric steps in, and it's like he has his heroic moments from time to time, but then again chastised by the father, because like they just want to put their head in the sand, like don't want to make things worse. But the uncle's like probably a little younger, slightly. It's like, no, what Eric did was the right thing. You can't let these people push us around, because it's not, no matter what we do, it doesn't get any better. And as a black man, you can more than understand. There's a few moments where you can more than understand where Jewish people are coming from, given how like it is a moment where we'll bring it up, but it's a moment where like Eric was about to stab a soldier for shooting a Jewish kid, and the uncle stepped in, preventing him from doing that. And he points out like, yeah, sure, you'll feel good at the moment, but as soon as they find the body, they would kill a bunch of like innocent Jewish people trying to find out who did it. And I can't help but think about how many times, especially during like the 80s and 90s, where racist cops were abundant, and like somebody retaliates, and more often than not if somebody ends up like hurting or killing a cop back in those days, then there's like a bunch of trigger happy cops looking for revenge come marching through a bunch of black neighborhoods and wreak all holy hell. So it's like there's very one-to-one comparisons that I can't help but think about. And you hear like the uncle's like what you want the son to like to do is, and the father's like, because it stresses everybody out, everybody's on edge, and the father snaps like, I want my son to live, kind of thing. And it's like you can't not help but understand the father's point of view. You can understand everybody's point of view in this. This is very stressful times, and it's like the father doesn't want the next Jewish child that dies to be his own children. But this is like leads into the points where the German soldiers starts breaking into Jewish homes, dragging people out, mostly killing them, but also taking all their valuables and everything like that. And this is one of those like pages I want to talk about here. I want to make sure I do not mince words here. November 7th, 1938, Herschel Jernspan, like I'm going to butcher a lot of these names here, a teenager whose relatives were among the 15,000 Polish Jews deported from Germany but refused entry to Poland, assassinates the German attaché Ernst von Rath in Paris. November 9th through the 10th, 1938, Kristallnacht. Across Germany and Austria, Nazis unleashed attacks on Jewish businesses, homes, and synagogues, At least 91 Jews were killed and 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and sent to concentration camps. Approximately 500 Jewish-owned businesses are smashed and looted. Within days, the Nazis began passing legislation to enforce the alienation of Jewish businesses. Jews throughout Germany are forced to sell their businesses to non-Jews, usually at enormous losses. November 12, 1938, the Nazis announced a 1 billion mark fine to be levied against the Jews to pay for Kreuznach. So they paying them for smashing their stuff, essentially, which is horrific. This is like, man, this is hard. I won't say it's hard for me to read, but this is like, man, this is like, you read through this, can't help but just feel like, oh my God, feel crappy. Because I can't imagine for a Jewish person reading this. I'm pretty sure, I imagine how triggering this is. It's probably how I feel when I'm, watching something or reading something depicting slavery. It's like very triggering. Or a Native American person reading something about like colonization. That can be very triggering. There's horrific stuff done to minorities throughout, civilization. But there's always those key moments that's probably more horrific than any other time. But it's kind of builds. During this period, Eric's family starts like, because Eric spots this stuff right away, and he runs to everybody in the rooms in the house like, oh, we gotta get out of here. They're starting to smash through people's homes. We gotta get out, move. And so as they're sneaking through like the streets and everything like that, watching everybody getting dragged out of their homes and some getting shot and everything like that, it's just tough, man. They just on the run trying to avoid being the next people. Here's some other like stuff here, info dumps. The German army invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939. Following the main German forces, Nazi, now you're going to attempt that, or operational groups, hunted down Jews and Polish intellectuals. In September and October of 1939, the Längser Gruppen or something and other German forces killed over 16,000 Jewish and Polish civilians. 2 years later, followed the German army into the Ukraine and Russia, slaughtering Jews wherever they found them. So yeah, it's just like the beginning of the slaughter, pretty much. It's like just millions of innocent Jewish people were just slaughtered by these German soldiers. But eventually, they gone to this like these Warsaw ghettos, and it was like like just so packed to the brim with a bunch of different families. And then eventually they're starting like, the Germans starting to wall them off and giving out certain rations, but not enough, clearly, because a bunch of them start dying of starvation. And, one kid, Eric helped give him like this piece of cheese. Eric managed to sneak out through like a crack in the wall, and the kid tried to follow him, but he gets busted. And this is the moment where I mentioned earlier about like the kid getting shot. Eric tried to jump in to like avenge him, but the uncle steps in to prevent like more innocent people getting killed. But this kind of really starting to like, build to Eric's Magneto starting to really set like a foundation of the personality that we know him to be. But then well, the uncle stayed behind to try to uh essentially, like, you know, do his part to at least lead a revolt or something like that, to try to like fight back. Eric wanted to stay behind, but seeing his family needed him more, especially his eyes to be able to point out certain things that they probably won't be able to, they meet up with like a essentially like a like an informant or something like that to help them navigate through the forest, try to reach like a safe haven. But it turns out that, you know, the Nazis got to this lady first. They held her mother captured, so to keep her alive, they, you know, she, you know, essentially led them to an ambush. And this is one of the most horrific things. I didn't want to give like the graphic pages here, but you can tell what's going to happen, where they, you know, got these trenches, lined these, you know, Eric's family up, and this is where you see, like, you know, his powers is going to manifest, or he could have probably easily at that exact moment stopped those bullets. But when the rounds are started firing, probably it was the father who jerked him slightly enough where all but Eric had survived this slaughter. He hid for a while, but as he's trying to make his way, he still got nicked in the, you know, forehead a bit. And so not only he witnessed his entire family get, aside from maybe his uncle, getting slaughtered, laying there with the bodies and bleeding himself, he crawled out woozy, but still got spotted by a German civilian, and he was carted off to a concentration camp where he met up with his former Jewish teacher, who informs him about what like he needs to do. To say you're 18, trying to keep him alive, because they, you know, like lead all the able-bodied men to one area, while the women and children go to a different area. So they started, like, you know, the newcomers shaving off their heads, putting in these like these black and white striped clothes, and they started, like, you know, working in these camps. But you see Eric's witnessing, for at least a good couple of years, witnessing people being gassed, shot, beat on, just many horrific things. At one moment, he contemplated on warning some women in that where they're being led to with their children. And of course, his teacher stopped him and was like, probably better if they think, and this is horrific to even contemplate, but it's like, oh, it's better that they think one way, because if you told them what was going to happen, then they start panicking. The German soldiers would start shooting, you know, a bunch of them, including the children. So it's, you know, lesser of two evils, which is kind of like, you know, just, I can't even fathom. Like, you read about this stuff in books, or you've seen documentaries and movies about this kind of stuff, but you cannot even begin to understand what it probably would have been like. I'm pretty sure maybe there's like a handful of elderly Jewish people who are still alive that can, you know, tell you what happened, or definitely historians can definitely tell you what happened. But I can't imagine just ordinary Jewish elders telling this story, because I doubt they want to even relive that in their minds. But, you know, my God, I can't even imagine, just because that's probably seared into their freaking brains that they would give probably anything to just get that out of. It's like I can't even fathom being during that, even the time during the civil rights era, let alone during the slavery era, as a black person, you know, being privy to people getting whipped and, you know, castrated or separated from their families, children taken away, or even just spit on or looked down on. Like shit is real in this day and age, despite like spurts of racist Karens out there in the world. But God, like, I can't imagine just the level of racist crap even during like the 50s and 60s. Just having like walking into an establishment with signs that says whites only or colored people only. Looking at that, just like I can't imagine any black person, a young black person of this day and age. I'm pretty sure like my father was the last generation to even be witness to something like that, before things start like making like a turn for the better little by little. But you definitely throughout like the 80s into the 90s, it's like little by little there's like changes in like a switch in a way where you won't see that kind of crap anymore. And Eric walks in onto like a building. It's filled with thousands upon thousands upon thousands of glasses, like eyewear from a bunch of people that were killed. And it's like, oh my God, it's just like they've been doing this for a while. And that's how like just horrific. And some time went by. Eventually, his teacher was killed, or you see him on like a conveyor belt or something like that, where like they're, I guess, either disposing the bodies or he just jumped into like a furnace or something like that and just like ended it himself. But either way, it's like things are starting to take a toll for Eric, where he was literally contemplating on even like deleting himself. But that was until he sees on an opposite camp from his, where they kept the Romani people, and he sees Magna. He recognized her despite being like her hair being cut. He sees her still holding the necklace that he gave her, and this gives him like a renewed hope, where now he's like, okay, we're gonna have to, him and a bunch of other people in the camp is like, okay, we gotta do something. It's gonna get proceedingly worse. We cannot wait for the allies to come rescue us. It would have been cool to like have Captain America come in and at least at the tail end having liberate a bunch of this camp, but no such luck. It would have been cool. But he bribes a couple of soldiers with any piece of gold he might have found or whatever, just to get like a moment to speak with her or uninterrupt her or whatever. And he breaks down to Magna of his plan and what she needs to do. Like, get on this particular train, they'll take you somewhere that'll be safe, but if you don't manage to make it, then hide amongst the bodies, and they'll lead you into my camp where I will find you, and we can like escape. We're making up this big plan because he knows that you can hide her here for at least a little while, at least long enough for their revolt plan to activate, which goes slightly ahead of schedule. Because like things, these camps are starting to get liquidated, and like they're just going to off the rest of them. So Magna just like, okay, I'll listen to you, and she does, and she eventually is found among these other corpses, and I can't imagine like the smell and like the rot and everything like that. It's just like, but she did it, and it saved her life. And a couple of the people in the camp was, was like contemplating like, yo, we cannot have her here because this is kind of messing up our plans. If they find her, then the jig is up, because they've been like scrapping and scrounging for weapons and stuff just to legit fight their way out. A bomb goes off, which kind of like gives them the signal. Okay, this is 1944 right now. This is like the tail end of when things are starting to turn around in the war. So everybody starts running. Eric takes Magna and they start running out. Some don't make it, but Eric and Magna manage to escape. And this is when things are starting like turn for the favor of the Allies. So this is one final little panel where it says like, on October 7th, 1944, the Sonderkommando in Crematorium 2 and 4 rise up, destroying Crematoria 4, killing 3 SS men and wounding a dozen more. 200 Sonderkommando are killed in the camp during or after the battle. Another 250 who escaped the camp's perimeters are shot and burned to death in a barn in nearby Rajesko. Crematorium 4 is never repaired, but on October 9th, the killings resumed. 4,000 Jews are killed in Crematoria 2 and 5. And on October 10th, the 800 gypsies who have been transferred back to Auschwitz from Buchenwald are killed in Crematorium 5. The Allies never bombed the death machinery of Auschwitz. But in November 1944, as the Red Army draws near, SS Rationführer Himmler orders the dismantling of the crematoria. January 26, 1945, the SS dynamite Crematorium 5. January 27, 1945, the Red Army liberates the camp and 7,000 prisoners who remain. Altogether, the Nazis systematically killed approximately 6 million Jews and many millions of other innocent civilians. At least 1 million people died at Auschwitz-Birkenau. Yeah, there's a little info for you guys. And they did their deep research on this, and kudos to them for doing so and getting it from the horse's mouth so they can accurately input what transpired during these events while Magneto would have been there. So Magneto leaves a note behind. He's a little older now. I imagine he's settling down with like Magna at this point, about to have his children, which would have been Polaris, Wanda, and Pietro, respectively. And I'm pretty sure it'll be coming up to the point where he will meet Professor Charles Xavier, establishing the whole situation with, helping mutants and everything like that, as we know, moving forward. But yeah, this was an amazing read. Honestly, this is like high praises. Very informative, harrowing, but I love the cover. The cover arts to each of these issues are amazing. Probably the best. One of the best I've seen. Next to probably like Emma Frost's cover arts, where you just see all this black and white with just like a shade of red here and there. And like, Magneto's adult form looming in the background of the skies or something like that. Just, man, it's just, it's a fantastic read. But I advise you guys to be prepared for certain things you might see, which is probably, especially if you're Jewish, please, brace yourself. I'm pretty sure you heard stories from like your elders, or you're reading this kind of stuff. Brace yourself. There's certain images that might be a little tough to watch, but it's probably good for people to read these kind of things to get at least a truncated account of this harrowing time. But yeah, that was Magneto Testament. it'd be kind of cool at the tail end for them to actually see Charles, or at least you know, introduces himself to him. But I'm also glad that, you know, this isn't about Magneto's powers. It didn't really manifest yet. You see glimpses here and there, so you don't forget about it, but it's pretty much like a biopic. It's not focused on the fantastical nature of that is Marvel Comics. It's pretty much almost like an Elseworlds kind of thing, almost. But it's like a more documented thing. But it's really good. It's really, really good. I will see you guys in a few minutes, as I will be doing a spoiler review for Marvel Anime X-Men. It's probably not going to take so long, but it was a good watch. But I will see you guys in a few minutes. Like I said, leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think if you read this book before. But if not, highly encourage you guys to do so. All right. And that being said, I will see you guys soon. Peace.